Now before starting this video, I have to give a big shout out for Anime Obsessed for recommending this manual to me. I mean, the man clearly has some good taste. Now, the Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon was a bit different. I said that because it included a lot of martial arts, which is something you actually don't see in the anime medium very often. Usually you see, you know, some form of martial arts, but they sort of dilute it down and make it all, they animefy it basically. They don't necessarily, you know, focus on the technique. They don't focus on the method. They don't focus on the meditation. And not a lot of anime do that. The only anime that I can think of that's done that is Kenichi's Strongest Disciple. And even that, I watched it for the breast. The Chronicles of the Heavenly Demon was a very interesting story. First of all, we started with our main protagonist and the master being basically jumped by a bunch of people. Well, I say a bunch of people, but a bunch of masters of different sections or different factions of a community. The apprentice and his master dies there. What happens is the apprentice is wearing a crystal and somehow it brings him back to life and reincarnates him into a demonic cult. And this demonic cult isn't necessarily demonic, but the practices aren't really accepted by the martial world, hence they are segregated from the martial world. However, they're not really too different from normal martial artists, but it's just that
their ki is a bit scary.
So fast forward, he's resurrected into this sort of demonic cult, which is just another martial arts faction that hasn't joined an alliance. We just see him learn martial arts again, but the person he reincarnated into was a very weak individual. So weak, he was actually named number 900. Now, it does go from 1 to 900, so you can assume 900 was basically the weakest, so he had to climb the ranks. Now, he was in this cave. This cave is basically where they throw children.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, that sounded odd. It's not where they just throw children, it's where they train the next generation of this demonic cult or this martial arts faction. Now, he spends 10 years in this cave and comes out as the #1 rank. This is possibly because he understood some techniques previously, because he did have a previous life, and he was also a Spearmaster apprentice. So he combined his Spearmaster techniques and he also combined the Demon's technique to form a new technique, so to speak. And he figured out that someone else had already done it. Someone else had been in the exact same position he had, was an apprentice of the Spearmaster faction, but was also a heavenly demon. Now, to be honest, the main thing that drives this story is vengeance. As I said before, the master and his apprentice, and the apprentice is the person that we're following, basically they got jumped. He's like, you know what, I've had enough of this. We're ending people. I'm gonna sort it out. So he makes a list and he's now starting to cross people off that list. However, he understands that he can't do this alone. So he needs to improve his rank, he needs to improve his power. So over time he does start to, you know, gain some influence. Over time he does start to become an influential figure within the demonic cult. Now, I don't want to ruin where he gets to, I don't want to ruin how far he goes, but I think that's the main crux of the story. Apart from, you know, some secrets and some mysteries, he does also get into a decent position of power, and it does look a bit more likely that he will be able to, you know, viably exact his revenge. Now, the character himself, I don't want to say he's not interesting. What I mean by that is that he's very obviously just chasing revenge. I mean, that's what it is. But he does also struggle with the fact that as part of the Spear faction, the Spear martial arts faction, he does also have to maintain a righteous heart. So he does sometimes struggle between him going for vengeance and being part of this demonic cult, but he also does remember his, you know, old master and the things he's been through with the old master and how his old master was, you know, murdered by the ops, basically. Saying that doesn't really take away from his character. It just means if you're looking for this lethal amount of depth, maybe this isn't for you. But if you're looking for a good character balance, I think this is 100% the one. I don't think it's all that, and I don't think it's amazing. And with this being basically the first, you know, the first time I'm ever consuming Chinese media, I think it's really good. So if you're thinking of giving something to do with martial arts a watch, 100% Chronicles of Heavenly Demon is something for you. Now, I have one pet peeve. I feel like when stories focus on the main character so much and the combat ability of the main character and making scenes look cool and, you know, focusing on the progression of the main character, I feel like they do lack in some other areas. For example, the one pet peeve that I have for this story is the love interest. I can see where this is going. Like, I know who the love interest is going to be. I know how this is going to end. But for some reason, I hate her. I don't know why. She didn't do nothing to me. She done nothing to no one. She done nothing to you or me or everyone on the planet. She didn't do anything. But for some reason, I can't stand her. She just seems very irritating. I mean, she has no charisma about her, no style about her, there's no zest. She's just a pest. I mean, to the point where I get annoyed through the screen. I'm like, oh I'm reading, I'm like, oh, go away, get off the screen. Like, she's just an uninteresting pile of fudge. You can't have everything. This manhwa can't really be absolutely everything that I wanted, but it's a good step in the right direction in terms of me consuming more Chinese media. But for the most part, this manhwa is actually really good. The art style is absolutely phenomenal. I always do use these big words in terms of amazing, phenomenal, but the art style is really, really good. It's not the best I've seen by any means, so let's not get confused now, but it is really good. You won't ever miss out in terms of the artistic expression standpoint. You will always feel as though the artist is, you know, giving you something new each chapter. So 100%, this is in terms of art style, it's actually really good. Now, the other thing this manhwa does in terms of story is progression. The cultivation section of the manhwa sort of side of things, in terms of the manga side of things, the cultivation section, Jesus Christ. I mean, if you type in manhwa in your browser, you just get a bunch of cultivation manhwa, fantasy manhwa, like solo leveling, and all that. Like, you get a bunch of it. Now, I don't know if it's because it's a cultivation manhwa, but in terms of progression, they don't rush it. He doesn't get overtly strong in bursts. I mean, it takes him a while, first of all, to reach new levels of his combat ability, and even when he does reach new levels of his combat ability, he still is not leaps and bounds above everyone he's ever faced. He still must fight. Obviously, there is a point where he reaches a certain I don't want to say it, but you know, he reaches a certain and you can clearly see he's head and shoulders above the rest. But throughout his progression, you never feel as though he's never at risk. You feel as though each fight is, oh, you got lucky there, sunshine. It's never a case of that he's overwhelmingly defeating his opponent. However, his skill and talent does always seem to shine through, basically because he was an apprentice of the spear faction of the martial arts world, and now he's part of the demonic version of the martial arts world, and that's it really. There is no weird, you know, leaps in combat ability. He has to get saved like once or twice. It's sort of a case of, this is like a more realistic version of if you were a martial artist, if ki was a viable thing that we could see an outward expression of, this is maybe how things would go if this world was governed by, you know, martial artists and martial law and stuff like that. This is how I can see things going, and the fact that it kept that realism and didn't decide to conform to, oh my god, my friends are in danger, let's boost the main character's power, I think it's very important. And that's one of the things I like about manhwa and, you know, the Chinese version of manhwa as well, because instead of having a shonen protagonist, instead of like giving people power boost out of nowhere, pulling special powers out of your ass, it actually feels like the main character has worked for this. For once, the main character has sort of be like, yeah, I'm gonna train, sort myself out, let's do this. I'm not just gonna get a random power because I'm special. I'm going to show some promise, I'm going to show some talent, but at the end of the day, he's still a disciple, still an apprentice. He still constantly learns and trains, which is one of the things I found very pleasurable about reading this. It was actually brilliant reading experience. However, it's just some manhwa like these do lack in other aspects. For example, character design of different people was lacking. A lot of people look the same. I mean, I don't know if you can help that, but apart from the main people, a lot of people did look the same. A lot of people were repetitive. I guess it's just something you got to deal with, to be honest, but those are my only pet peeves. The love interest and the fact that character design could have been done a little better. Some people do look the same to me, but for the most part, the manhwa was absolutely amazing. And if you're looking for something that has a cultivation aspect and, you know, shrouds itself in martial arts, if you want to get started, this is for you. Like, I've read 140 chapters in like 2 days, and I'll be honest, I enjoyed a lot of it. There were rarely parts of it that I felt like, oh, this is getting old now, lads, let's move on. Yeah, most of it was pretty good. I really did enjoy the fight scenes. I really did enjoy the fact that every fight was fought. There was stakes. There was like, oh, he could be in danger here, oh, he's injured. Don't get me wrong, he was still visibly powerful than some of his opponents. However, there were some close calls, and everyone he meets, he isn't head and shoulders above. He is maybe a level or two above, so they could still do some damage to him. Basically, if he wanted to kill most people, he'd have to lose an arm, or he'd have to be seriously injured. So it wasn't a case of, right, the main character is going to get everything. The main character still has to work for his position in the world, and he has to keep himself in check, which I think is very important. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.